All right, what's up, everybody? We're back, and we are talking about the new Trump coalition today. This is something that's been covered a lot. We talked about it here on the podcast about what the new Republican Party looks like, but I wanted to cover it for you guys in a two-part episode series here, where we're really going to dig into what the different voter demographics look like in 2024, what the Republican Party was like in 2016 to 2020 to now. And so this is something I've been wanting to do for a while for you guys. We talk about it here and there in pieces, and we just needed things to slow down just a little bit more in the news cycle to kind of get this episode out. Not to say that things haven't been still fast paced, but they've slowed down a little bit from where they were after Trump's first 100 days here. So let's get right into it. And so I wanted to start here actually in 2016. I want you guys to try and think all the way back. And actually, 2015 is probably a little more accurate because we're thinking back to the primaries that Donald Trump eventually ended up winning and then going on to win the general election in 2016. And in 2015, back when he announced and came down the golden escalators, it was unthinkable that he would have won the presidency. At this time, nobody that had ever, or I should say, every single president we've had in the past, aside from Donald Trump, had either served in the military or had prior political experience. Trump had none of that, obviously. We all know this, but we're going to cover it real quick. And it turns, people mocked him. Everybody thought, that he was just some clown. He was a joke. He's, all these different things. And they, Democrats openly talked about, Hillary Clinton openly talked about wanting him to run. He'd be easy to beat, blah, 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 blah. Democrats actually campaigned for him, putting money into ads for him in the primaries to try and get him nominated so that they could have their easy win in 2016. But something had changed. Donald Trump made immigration the center of his 2016-2015 policy. And it really resonated with people. Now fast forward again 10 years, super majorities of Americans support mass deportation still. But the Republican Party, prior to 2015, the last nominee, I think, was Mitt Romney, the most milquetoast Republican you could imagine. And so the Republican Party decided to double down on a bolder and brasher figure. And Republicans really embraced his populist message, his populist economics versus, you take Mitt Romney, I think he was some kind of hedge fund manager, as he was the least populist candidate you could imagine. He was an establishment guy. But there was this big wave of populism coming through in 2015. It manifested itself in the Republican Party with Donald Trump and in the Democratic Party with Bernie Sanders. Now we know Bernie Sanders had his election rigged, that the DNC cheated to make sure he didn't get nominated and it would be Hillary Clinton instead. And what that resulted in was a shift of all the people, especially young folks, who really valued populism above all else, to shift from maybe leaning Democrat, voting for Bernie Sanders to voting for Donald Trump. And I won't say that's how Donald Trump won the 2016 election. There were a lot of factors in that, and I don't want to go break down what seems like ancient history at this point. But we know that the Republican Party did not want Donald Trump to win, the RNC, the establishment. And back in 2015, at one point, Jeb Bush was the favorite to win the primary. And then you had like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, and Donald Trump was some, distant follower. But that all changed because you watch the old debates and the Republicans, the standard Republicans, I'll call them, were up there just given the most, I don't want to say brain dead because the policies they're pushing weren't brain dead, but there were policies the Republicans had talked about for decades and had never actually accomplished. And Donald Trump gets up there and hits them hard, talking about the Iraq war being a failure, which was obviously true at this point, hitting Jeb Bush on that. The fake tax cuts Republicans had wanted to push, not being able to repeal and replace Obamacare, all these different things. And Republicans were ready for a change. And so were Democrats. But the primary voters were stifled. Bernie Sanders was cheated out of his what I think an election that he would have won had he had a fair shot at his primary, but you never know. That's counterfactual. That's going to be tough to prove. But I wanted to remind everybody what this country was like in 2015. Obama was, just wrapping up his presidency. We're still in the Middle East having these forever wars, fighting ISIS, all this crap. And Donald Trump comes on the scene. And I wish I was just listening to somebody with this montage of people that were really just out there saying Donald Trump was going to lose, or I shouldn't say that Donald Trump would lose, but that he would never even be nominated to be president. This was like in 2014 when he's first flirting with running for the presidency. And I'll just play a little bit of it for you guys right here.
Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
I think if he becomes the president here, make it great, because the states is already good.
I think that man will be president of the United States right about the time that spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red capes.
On that note, Tom,
Take it from me. How about that?
Cheers, Tom. Thank you.
I mean, he had a really good chance to be different and really have a chance to change things, but he doesn't do the work. He's lazy.
Donald Trump, just last week, he confirmed to the National Review that he is again considering a run in 2016.
Do it. Do it. Look at me. Do it.
I will personally write you a campaign check now on behalf of this country, which does not want you to be president, but which badly wants you to run.
He's not going to be president.
Yeah, the great John Oliver there for you guys. I wonder if he still feels that way, considering he's done episode after episode of hit pieces on Donald Trump. I'd like to go send him that clip again. But that's how people were feeling in 2014, 2015, that Donald Trump was just some joke and that this wave of populism was, nothing to be worried about. Obviously, they were all wrong. But what I want to fast forward to then is, Donald Trump, he wins his election. People on the morning of election day in, 2016, they were already celebrating Hillary Clinton's victory, all those famous videos of the liberals losing their minds. But let's fast forward to 2024, because Donald Trump's president for 4 years. He has his election with 2020. Joe Biden becomes president. He's in for 4 disastrous years, really ends up destroying the Democratic Party in a way that no Republican ever really could. That's really kind of funny. Joe Biden's biggest accomplishment, something he did that Donald Trump could never actually do, was degrade the Democrat Party that badly. And Joe Biden did that almost single-handedly. And I say single-handedly, and really I should clarify and say that Joe Biden's administration was responsible for a lot of the horrible failings they had, Secretary Mayorkas and the whole host of them. Joe Biden wasn't really telling him what to do on the border. People weren't, just taking their orders straight from Joe Biden the way they do Donald Trump. They were running it themselves, and they ran everything into the ground and completely destroyed the Democratic Party's brand. They were already doing a good job of it before, but they really finished it off from 2020 to 2024. And we all know Donald Trump comes screaming back. He ends up, the moment I think he wins the 2024 election is actually when he gets shot in the head and stands up and has that fight moment. At that point, I think the right really coalesced around him. And it seemed that Joe Biden, everyone knew he was completely feckless. They end up replacing him with Kamala Harris 2 weeks later. She's absolutely terrible. But Donald Trump never, there was no point where I thought he was just going to coast to this victory. He continued to change the Republican Party in 2024, just like he did in 2016. So in 2016, with his populist message, he's bringing a lot of union votes over. He's talking about his tariffs, protectionist trade policy, really running up the score with high school educated white people, especially white men. He was making gains with black men, Hispanic men back in 2016, but he didn't just coast on that coalition, especially after 2020. He decided that he was really going to run out the score. He was going to max out his populist message, which was really a great strategy because there was so much ground available to be occupied with this, more populist leaning folks, especially, younger people. And, now we know how much young people, especially young men, voted for Trump. But Kamala Harris, because of who she was, being a government shill, a prosecutor, and completely ineffectual vice president from one of the most unpopular administrations we've had in a long time, she wasn't able to occupy the populist ground. And Donald Trump from 2016 still had a lot of credibility with that group of people, that new ideology that was really taking front and center in the last decade. So what he does, Donald Trump, he doubles down on his tariff talk. He doubles down on mass deportations. He really goes out and messages to people who are working class that billionaires, Democrats, these, really rich, elite, top of the top, the folks that vote 99% Democrat living in San Francisco and New York, they are wanting to open this country up to unlimited illegal immigration for a couple main reasons. Number one, the real reason behind it is that they want cheaper labor. These are people that are very rich and they profit a lot from cheap labor. And so that's number one. They want to undercut the wages of actual citizens. And so they hide behind this woke ideology, and they're able to move a lot of like college educated white women by just pretending that that they want to just do good in the world. There's a lot of white guilt. We need to bring people in here so this country becomes more brown, and then we can all feel better about ourselves. But it's really about money. Don't ever forget that these social issues, most of them are just meant to distract you while the real sleight of hand happens in the background, while they make themselves extremely rich. But Donald Trump, he sees this. He knows he's not beholden to the establishment, and he doubles down and says, no, we're going to have mass deportations. Joe Biden let 11 million illegal immigrants into this country. We're going to deport every one of them. And I think everybody knows that's hyperbole. It's not going to be possible to deport 11 million people in 4 years. But that's the sentiment people were looking for. And that's where I want to get into the polling, the demographic breakdown, and what the Republican Party is looking like now. Because it's a lot different than it used to be. People would go, Rachel Maddow would go on MSNBC and she would tell you the Republican Party's dying out. They're the party of octogenarians. And, in 10 years, when those people are all dead and gone, then Republicans will never win an election again. And it turns out in 2024, we had the most conservative young generation we've had in a very long time. That theory completely fell apart. And it's because young people are populist. And the Republican Party has really taken on that mantle. And again, we've talked about populism and what it means here, many times, but I'll hit it again one more time. And it's really this focus on economic issues and how the rich institution controlling people use government institutions and massive corporations that exist illegally because they're monopolies. Those institutions are used to crush normal people. Those institutions are used to triple the price of college in the last couple decades. They're used to hike taxes. They're used to put restrictive taxes and regulations on small businesses. Everything they do is meant to keep the younger generation down while elevating the already, rich of the rich elite folks. And that's why so many young people, they see how rigged all this is. They saw it during COVID mostly. How the government does not have their best interests in mind, of course not. This was always true, but it really took COVID for people to come out and see this and see how much the government really did despise them and wanted to control them. So a lot of people became red-pilled, is what it became known as. So let's hit you with a couple statistics here. These are some ones that surprised me. And I want to start actually with the youth gap. Okay. In 2020, young women voted for Democrats 65% to 33%. Almost 2-1. Okay, young women voted for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, not that popular of a guy, but still they voted for him 65 to 33. In 2024, young women voted for Kamala Harris, and a female candidate, mind you, only 58% to Trump's 40%. So a 7-point swing in young women. In young men, 2020, and this is what I was telling you, young people used to be the cornerstone of the Democrats' coalition. Okay. 2020, young men voted for Joe Biden 56% to Donald Trump's 41%. In 2024, Kamala Harris received 42% of the young male vote. Donald Trump 56%. He blew her out with young men, a demographic that Democrats are supposed to dominate. And granted, she couldn't even. She carried young women, but about by nearly as much as Joe Biden did. So it's not surprising she got destroyed with young men. Okay. And here's an interesting statistic here that I'm just going to throw at you. Make of this whatever you will. I guess they didn't keep this stat in 2020, but non-binary youth voted 13% for Donald Trump, 82% for Kamala Harris. Whatever that means, do with that whatever you will. But that's the age gap we're talking about here. And when we say young, we mean 18 to 29. So again, the most conservative young generation we have seen in a really long time. I can't find data for the last time people voted this heavily for a Republican under the age of 29. It was quite a thing to see. So let's jump over to a little bit different way to slice the pie here. I want to talk about the racial breakdown. And I'm going to pull up this good chart I've got here. I'll also post it on our Facebook account. Because it was really good. And again, this is some polling that was done here in 2024. Okay, so this is for white men, okay? They voted 60% for Donald Trump, 37% Kamala Harris, okay? That is, for Joe Biden, he was 18 points underwater. And Kamala Harris, 23 points. So she lost 5 points in the white men category, one of the biggest demographics in the country, okay? Did 5 points worse than Joe Biden did. White women, she did actually worse than Joe Biden too. 2 points worse than Joe Biden amongst white women. White non-college educated people, roughly the same. They both voted for Trump by about 28 percentage points. White college educated people, though, they voted 10% more for Joe Biden, 6% more for Kamala Harris. She lost 4 points among college educated white people. Black men. Here is a crazy statistic, okay? This tells you how much black men don't like Kamala Harris, I guess. 82%, okay, is how much Joe Biden won the black male vote by. Kamala Harris only won it by 47%. The lead cut nearly in half compared to what Joe Biden did. Another crazy stat. Joe Biden did 2 percentage points better among black women than Kamala Harris did. It's really incredible. Black young people, it's even more. I mean, a 29% spread between what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did among young black people. I mean, it is just here's an interesting one. Here's a category that she overperformed on. She did better than Joe Biden in 2020 won the black college educated vote by 75%. Okay. Kamala Harris won it by 81%. This just tells you how radical some of these people are that are out there. Again, this is, we're getting into these double cross sections here where you've got, college educated and you've got a racial breakdown here. So the groups of people are getting smaller and smaller as I go down. But it tells you how many people, college educated people, are willing to vote based on race. It's not zero. And remember, her vote was cut in half when it came to black men. But when it comes to college educated, she gains 6%, which is weird with these weird statistics, right? So what you see is the Democratic Party becoming this more and more niche party of white college educated women, black college educated women, this becoming older. Actually, she did better with older people than she did with her. And when I say she did better with old people, I don't mean better than Donald Trump. I mean she did better relative to her performance compared to Joe Biden. Okay, obviously, old people voted for majority for Donald Trump. They almost always do for Republicans. That's not surprising. What's surprising is that the college-educated racial minority group is voting more and more Democrat, okay? Whereas suburban, uneducated, working-class people, regardless of race, are voting more for Republicans. That's why you're talking about the young black men voting more for Republicans than they have in any time I can remember. So what you have here is this Republican Party. It's becoming more diverse. Okay, it's becoming younger. And you have a Democratic Party becoming more and more educated, more and more academic class, okay, more government workers. And even though Republicans are becoming more diverse, Democrats are also doubling down on their minority vote, okay, which is why their proportion of the vote is getting smaller, why they lost this election by more than they had in a really long time. Okay, well, the last stat that I got right here is Asians voted. She lost about 11 points with the Asian group than Joe Biden did. She lost that over time, over those 4 years. It's really just incredible. Really incredible. We didn't even hit the Hispanic man. Let's hold on here. Here's an incredible one. Okay, because people talk about Republicans just being mostly white. Joe Biden won Hispanic men by 34 points over Donald Trump, okay? In 2024, Kamala Harris loses Hispanic men by 1 percentage point to Donald Trump, a 35-point swing for the Democrats towards Donald Trump. Okay, Hispanic women voted 40% more for Joe Biden than they did Donald Trump, only 20% more for Kamala Harris. Young Hispanic people, 18 to 54, okay? 2020, they voted 50% more for Joe Biden than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris, 5%. Donald Trump nearly won the young Hispanic vote, a cornerstone of the Democratic Party, okay? He won Hispanic men outright. And he nearly won young Hispanic people in general. That includes college-educated Hispanic women. That includes young college-educated Hispanic women. That's a group that votes 90% Democrat, okay? Yet he almost won the demographic as a whole because so many young Hispanic men are voting for Donald Trump. They're voting for Republicans because they see that they're not going to be able to provide for their future families. Okay, a lot of these guys, they're not married, they don't own a home, but they would like to be, and they can't get to that point in life, and and I think they're right, because the government, the taxes, the environment, the regulatory environment doesn't allow them to start businesses like their fathers and mothers were able to. Okay. With interest rates being 7% now and the prices of housing doubled, tripled compared to what their parents had to pay, they can't afford a house. They can't afford the American dream. And this is something, and I can tell you, It's something that all young men care about. And that's why you're seeing this push across all racial groups, okay? That's why you're seeing young men flocking to the to the Republican Party. Because Donald Trump was the only one talking about how interest rates need to come down, how inflation has to stop. Kamala Harris couldn't talk about it because she was responsible for it. But Donald Trump is talking about how the economy is not working for young people. Home ownership rates are plummeting. Okay, real wages are stagnant. It matters to young men because, and rightfully so, what woman wants to date a guy who's 30 years old and lives with his mom? Okay, or he has a job that he's only making $1 or $2 above minimum wage. What woman wants that? And they're right. I mean, they're not wrong for thinking that. A lot of women, even if they do work, okay, and still have a modern view of life, still want a man that's going to be able to provide for them. Okay, most women want a family. They know they're going to have to take time off work. They're going to have to raise kids. Okay, a lot of women have this traditional view of life where they know they're going to be the one providing the majority. Not all. It's not the 40s or 50s, not all, but they're going to be providing more on the front of care for their kids, okay, than men are. And that's still true even today. And so they want a man that makes good money, that can be a homeowner, okay, have a stake in his community. And men want that too. Everybody wants this. And it's becoming further and further out of reach for a lot of these young men. And you can see why they're frustrated and they're mad, and why this populist, vigor has taken over the Republican Party. It's easy to see why. So that's what the Republican Party is becoming to look more and more like now. More racially diverse, more younger, and more male. And you're going to continue to see those trends. If things don't get better, you're just going to keep seeing more and more men becoming more and more radically populist. And this is why I'm so worried, because this is how countries collapse. When enough young men can't afford to provide the life that they need to be able to attract somebody to marry them, when you have a lot of young single men who feel like they can't achieve their dreams, feel like their purpose in life is being hampered by fill in the blank, whether it's the government, whether it's the institutions of this country, whether they blame large corporations. You see a lot of that outrage manifest itself with Luigi Mangione, who killed the healthcare CEO. That's the same populist rage that is driving men to the Republican Party. And it feels funky if you're an older person who still thinks of Mitt Romney when you hear the Republican Party. You think of rich old white guys. That's the Republicans. They love big corporations. That's what they do. Not anymore. That's not the Republican Party anymore. It's becoming this lightning rod for the energy that the young men in this country are feeling. And it's going to continue to be that way. It doesn't look like, all the world's problems are going to be solved by Donald Trump, as much as, we might like to think so. They're just not going to be. The way our economy has become, okay, with wages being stagnant, prices of all the things that matter going way up, groceries, housing, your car insurance, gas, all the things you use most in life, even though the government tells you, the consumer price index inflation is only 8%. That's a lie. It's 25%. It's more. The way they weight the different baskets of goods makes the government look better because they don't want to report how high the inflation actually is. But we know it. We feel it. That's why the election went the way it did. It just, you have to really open your mind to what this party is becoming, and that it is a good thing. There are a lot of people that are resistant to this. Okay. It feels weird. I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm sure it feels weird for guys that are, in their 70s who voted Republican their whole life, who maybe live in Missouri, to see a black kid walking around in a MAGA hat. And it shouldn't feel weird. It shouldn't, because that's the way that our politics are becoming less and less. Even though people are still trying to stoke racial hatred, and we just had the summer of love in 2020, all that stuff. We should feel good that it seems like this breakdown, this party breakdown, where people view Republicans as being all white and Democrats as being all Hispanic and black, that's going away. That's a good thing. Okay, the less ways they can divide us, it's a good thing. And we want that. As Republicans, we want that. We want to be appealing to everybody. Okay, it doesn't matter what you look like. We want to be appealing. And we know that that politicians, I'll throw Barack Obama out there. Okay, race relations statistically got the worst they'd been in our country in a long time under Barack Obama, because he capitalized on that. Okay, he's half white, he's half black. He doesn't call himself white. He's black. That's what he would call himself. Okay, which is fine. You can call yourself whatever you want. But there was a reason that he stoked take the not George Floyd, the Ferguson, Missouri case. Okay, he fanned the flames of that into the point where cities were being burned. Okay, every leftist politician, when George Floyd died, cheered on the burning down of all of our major cities. They did. They love to divide us on race because they think that it helps them politically. And what you're seeing is that failed. That we are becoming less and less homogenous. And when I say homogenous, what I mean is that the parties, you're not going to be able to just look at somebody skin color and say, oh yeah, that person's a Republican or a Democrat. So I think we've kind of beat this to death here. This is what Republicans are thinking. This is what Republicans are looking like now. And Democrats, really, they don't look much different. They're just getting smaller. I guess they look a little older, but not all that much. We talked a little bit about union workers. I think that's a demographic that has been solidly Democrat and is changing. You see, I think it was the Auto Workers Union came and spoke at the Republican National Committee. The Teamsters union leader was just on Tucker Carlson. All this taboo about talking to Republicans, you shouldn't be going on this person's show, that person's show, it's gone. They'll go talk to Joe Rogan. They'll go talk to Tucker. They'll do it. And that's because, and I'm not going to touch too much on this because we have tons of episodes about it, and we'll probably do more in the future. But the whole woke culture is dead. The traditional media is dead. That was keeping all of these groups away from Republican platforms, like the unions, okay? Those propaganda outlets are gone. And I need to do some research. I want to say that one of these unions, I want to say it was the Teamsters, didn't endorse a candidate because they knew that their members were majority Republican. They did some polls, found they were Republican, and the union leaders, obviously Democrats, just decided that they weren't going to endorse. They weren't going to actually send the ballots out and make it public, which is complete horse shit. But eventually the union membership will get tired of that. Let me look this up here. Let me get this. Let's get my Jamie on this. Yeah, it was the Teamsters. Washington Post, too. Editorial wouldn't endorse anybody. I know Jeff Bezos was pretty much solely responsible for that. But okay, let's wrap up part 1 here. I want to get going on part 2 here pretty quick and get that out to you guys. So sorry this episode was late, but I wanted to make this a good little 2-part series here for you. So we'll see you guys shortly.